So politics, can it ever be over, Sean?
Well, it will be on, but one thing that I must give thumbs up to some of the politicians, some of those who have won, some of those who lost in this round of supplementary election, and the kind of words that are coming from them is very inspiring. Some of them will say, look, I've won now, but I'm the governor of all. Let's come together. This is not the first time we are hearing it today. Is not only from Samuel Ortom, the governor of Benue State and the governor-elect. Is not the only one that said it, Ladi. You heard, I guess we heard it from Governor Aminu Tambuwal also.
Well, that's right.
Who also had stretched a hands of fellowship to his opponent. And that, I think, is magnanimous because there is a lot of tension going into this election. Issues of violence, issues of people who are running after each other before this election. But when we hear this kind of comment from politicians, those who have won, and they've been magnanimous, they've been nice and kind in their words, I think it goes a long way to kind of restore peace. It then builds on the opponent to think, well, that has been said, how can we work together with the ruling party? It's always a very difficult one, isn't it? So what we see in turn is defection. So now that we have lost, can we then now defect together? I don't think people should be defecting everywhere. You could stay wherever you are and hold on to your philosophy, but you can assist the government of the day. That is who am I to give you an advice, politician? I'm just a political journalist, isn't it? So we were talking about Sokoto, Ladi.
Yes.
So maybe we should move away from Sokoto and let's talk about here, Plateau State. This man, twice lucky, isn't it? Now,
Indeed.
winning a re-election is being twice lucky. Now, so you look at the margin, 48,000. Mr. Adigba did say yesterday that, look, this is a done deal. It looks so much that the supplementary election was just an academic affair. And so as much, it looks so, and as what we've seen in the margin, it's wider than what we've seen in the case of both
Sokoto?
Yeah, absolutely, both Sokoto. So this is 48,000. A lot of votes in the sense that, look, if you ask Mr. Aminu Tambuwal, he will tell you, 48,000 is a lot of votes. So yesterday, what they were looking for
was almost the same thing.
Absolutely. So this man had done something that this man perhaps should learn from, or any other politician in Plateau State or start. Let's move to another state yet. Benue State, you just heard from the winner. But this was also looking like an academic affair yesterday because Mr. Adigba did say, this is but a done deal. But look at what we've got. The margin even wider than that of Plateau State. So from yesterday, what we were looking at, the margin between both of them, so wide, as wide between Lake Chad and the River Benue. So, but now...
Sure, hold on. Before you begin to talk about the width of distance between Lake Chad and
River
Benue, I think we should find out from the guests you have sitting in Abuja what they think about the issues that have come out of this result so far already.
Absolutely. So let me quickly do this. And okay, this is the one on not yet decided. Bauchi and, of course, Adamawa State.
Indeed.
That being said, let me introduce you to a panel tonight that we'll be talking to. Both of them lawyers. One a professor of law. One has been an activist, always on the street and fighting for human rights. Clement Nwankwo is the executive director of Policy Advocacy Center and also a co-convener of the election situation room. Is in our Abuja studio alongside Professor Tahir Maman, is a vice chancellor of the Bayes University, a former director general of the law school, and a professor of law. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming on tonight. Let me get your take on this election. How dramatic do you think the outcome of today's election, the supplementary election that is, has been for you? I haven't seen so many election cycles in Nigeria.
If that question is for me, I can tell you outright that for us who are observing the elections in the Situation Room, the outcome is much less a concern to us. The bigger issue for us is the process. And so I'm happy to talk about the process and happy to provide insights into how we have come through with all of this journey. But certainly the outcome is something that I would not want to comment on.
Well, let's talk about the process. That's interesting. Election is a process, not an event. For you, for the preparations INEC did say they had, and the security agencies, you start with them and some of those sessions. Anything tangible came out of it?
I think it's a challenge with the audio here, but I guess what you are asking is whether there were outcomes from the consultations that were going on between INEC and the different stakeholders. Certainly, I think when you look at the two previous elections, you just look at the process, look at the performance of the stakeholders, the Electoral Commission itself, the security agencies, both the police and order services, but also the military. And all of the other stakeholders, the politicians, the candidates. And we did come up with findings regarding what has happened. Now, coming to the supplementary elections, we did see, first of all, commendations to the military authorities. We didn't see them in these supplementary elections, certainly not in the way that we saw them in the two previous elections that really raised a lot of outrage in Nigeria about the military's involvement in the elections. We didn't see that with the supplementary elections, so they must be commended, and they must really take lessons from these supplementary elections to really realize that they should be out of our politics and out of our elections. But certainly, looking at the police, I think again, there were lots of areas where you did see a question of how you manage the situation. Plateau State, we had observers who were reporting too much policing in Plateau State. In Kano State, I don't even know whether to describe it as too much or too little, but certainly the police was nowhere to be seen when thugs and political rascals took over Gama Ward in Nasarawa local government of Kano State. And even though the police said it had deployed a Deputy Inspector General of Police, 3 AIGs, and several commissioners of police, the performance with the Kano election was really very questionable. And I think that when you look at the performance of a single commissioner of police in the two previous elections, put side by side with the multiplicity of top-level police officers that were deployed for the supplementary elections, then you can understand that the police certainly underperformed and were disappointed with respect to the elections in Kano. I don't know, I have not seen the way in which the results from Kano was computed, but what we had said in the report that we issued was that the violence in Gama Ward, for instance, and in all other areas where there was violence that made it meaningless to take those results seriously, should reflect in INEC jettisoning results from those areas. And I think going forward, and even with this, INEC needs to be very, very conscious of the fact that there are strategies that political parties use in ways that suppress votes, in ways that inflate votes, and INEC needs to be prepared with respect to how to deal with this.
You've talked about the security, and you've assessed their performance based on the interactions that you had with them before the supplementary election, and in fact, before the main election. Let's talk about INEC for a starter. For example, there were a lot of complaints as regarding the use of card readers, how it performed and how it did not perform in some areas. There was a sort of an assessment of the exercise after the main election, which you had with the debriefing from the commission with civil society organization. But from the supplementary election, did you notice, what are your observers on the field telling you as regarding INEC's own role and what they did on the field? Any improvement from the main election and the supplementary elections?
Well, certainly there were improvements, but again, these improvements can be, should be put in the context of the fact that there were, these elections were being run in fewer polling units. Polling was on time, on the average 8:30 in the morning. Most of the election officials were on ground. The smart card readers. We did see an improvement with that in the supplementary elections, that they function very well. But again, you must come to a stage where in a general election, all of the indices, all of the logistics need to be in place and needs to be functioning optimally. Where this happens only with respect to limited elections, as you did see with these supplementary elections, then you can't really say that a lot of lessons have been taken. We must get to the point where for big elections, general elections, everything needs to be spot on. But yes, in terms of the process, in terms of INEC's conduct with the supplementary elections, we would find it difficult to say that INEC did not do well. The big problem was thuggery, violence, vote buying, and all of the usual abuses that you see in elections, perpetrated mostly by politicians, but also a failure of the security system, in this case the police, to deal with or be prepared to deal with the issues that arose.
Quickly, we have about 30 seconds to go on the first break. Tell me, is INEC a commission that you are well pleased with compared to that of 2015?
Well, certainly, I think when you compare INEC with 2019 and INEC with 2015, perhaps it's certainly the elections in 2015 we have issued in our report was much better elections. But in 2015, you were dealing with fewer parties. In 2019, you were dealing with 93 political parties and with 72 candidates running for the presidential elections. This country needs to go back to the drawing board. A situation where you have a 3-4-man person constitute themselves into a political party and clog the ballot paper and waste everybody's time and waste resources is certainly not freedom in that sense. I think there must be more stringent conditions before any person is allowed to be on the ballots to run for president or governor, indeed any position. You must really have a situation where candidates emerge not to grandstand, not to promote their individual self,
Clement,
but really seriously
let
to
me
be
pause you
talking
for a
about
moment.
running for elections.